The NFL trade deadline is just about here, and I have a few thoughts to share regarding what the Giants might and might not do and why. That's coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, as well as for New York Giants on SI, which is where you can find my written work. And of course, a welcome on in to my Blue Crew community members. Hope you've been enjoying the little stats and tidbits and scoopage that I've been sending to you. Also, welcome on in to my everydayers, to my newcomers, to everybody in between. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with us here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And today's Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. All right, on today's Locked On Giants podcast, we're going to take a look at the two most heavily rumored Giants to be traded, Darius Slayton and Azeez Ojulari. I'm going to give you some thoughts on each and who I think realistically is going to get moved, who I don't think is going to get moved, what I think the price might be, that what the Giants are looking for, and just a little bit of other information, to kind of fill this out, the picture out for you, looking at it from a business perspective, looking at it from a cap perspective, and all that stuff. So that's going to be segments 1 and 2. We'll do Azeez first, and we'll do Darius Slayton in the second segment. Segment 3, there are some ugly numbers that the Giants have been racking up this season on the whole. So we'll talk about some of those. That's actually some research that I started doing for an article that I'm going to write, but I'm going to give you a little sneak peek in segment 3. So again, thank you for dropping in. Let's talk about Azeez Ojulari. All right, Azeez Ojulari, if you're looking at the trade candidates that are most likely to be moved by the Giants by the 4 p.m. deadline on Tuesday, Ojulari probably makes the most sense. All right. Now, here's the thing, though, folks. Over the last, 24 to 48 hours, I would say, the options are closing up for the Giants. All right. So you have the Cardinals, who are rumored to be very interested in Azeez Ojulari. They just acquired Baron Browning from the Denver Broncos for a 6th-round pick. So you can cross Arizona off the list. Detroit, who is also in need of some pass rush help, having lost Aiden Hutchinson. They are very heavily rumored, according to NBC Sports, to be this close to acquiring Darius Smith from the Browns. Right? A move which, if you think about, makes sense because, Aiden Hutchinson will be back eventually, if not this year, the next year. Darius Smith, 32 years old. You really just need a stopgap. So that really leaves, if you're looking at the realistic candidates, that leaves Atlanta. And right now, it's debatable whether or not, Atlanta, or it's not known, I should say, how deep into any talks Atlanta might have with the Giants about Azeez Ojulari. I mean, it would be a great fit for him, being from Georgia, grew up in Georgia, played his college ball, his high school ball in Georgia. So he basically would be going home. But that being said, here's the thing, folks. People seem to think that the Giants should take whatever they can get for Azeez Ojulari because his contract is ending this year. Odds are they're not going to re-sign him. All right. But here's the thing. Let's take a look at some numbers first off. All right. First and foremost, a few years ago when the Giants traded Marcus Golden to the Arizona Cardinals, Golden, if I remember correctly, was about 4 years older than Azeez Ojulari. And the Giants got in return a 6th-round draft pick for Golden. All right. So you're talking, or there are people that are talking and saying, well, the Giants, they could get a 6th-round pick because, hey, Denver just traded Baron Browning to the Cardinals and got a 6th. The Giants should take it. Here's a couple things though. Baron Browning is 25 years old, has 9.5 career sacks in 43 games. Azeez Ojulari is 24 years old, has 22 sacks in 44 games. Azeez Ojulari's problem has never been talent. It has been injury history, okay? That has been his Achilles heel. When he stays healthy, the guy's productive, okay? He was, I think, the only Giant defender in this past week's game, that had multiple pressures. And we all pretty much know that the pass rush was dead against the Commanders, all right? So if you're Joe Schoen, you really going to give away Azeez Ojulari for a 6th-round pick? What about a 5th-round pick? Nah, I don't think you would give him away for that either. I think if you're the Giants, you want to ideally get at least a 3rd. Might you settle for a conditional 4th? I could maybe make a case for that. But I don't think if I'm Joe Schoen, I would go lower than a 4th. Because let's say nothing comes to fruition. Next year, you figure Azeez Ojulari, if he stays healthy and he keeps producing on the pace that he's producing, he's going to get a nice little payday. All right. So what kind of payday might he get? Well, let's take a look at a contract that I think was Jonathan Cooper of the Broncos. Yeah, Jonathan Cooper of the Broncos, who was a former 7th-round draft pick. He signed a 4-year, $60 million deal with $33 million in, I think it was this year. Okay, $33 million guaranteed. He has 18.5 sacks in 56 games. You mean to tell me that Azeez Ojulari, if he is healthy, can't get a deal better than that? I think he can. Again, guy's going to be 25 years old next year, right? Still young, still hasn't peaked. So if you're Joe Schoen, are you saying to yourself, well, gosh, if I can't get my asking price for him now, then I'll just wait it out and see if I can't get a comp pick for him if he signs elsewhere. Now, there's a danger to that. I understand that because there's no guarantee you'll get the comp pick if you go crazy and you sign guys and they cancel out any potential comp picks you might get for guys that you lose. Also, the argument is, well, the Giants need to stockpile draft picks now. They've got to be able to trade up in round 1 for a quarterback if they need it. Folks, to that, I would say there's no guarantee the Giants are going to trade up for a quarterback in this class. This draft class, there are some good quarterbacks in there. I'm not going to, say that there aren't, but I don't necessarily think at this stage, and disclaimer, I haven't gotten deep into it. I'm just going based off of stuff that I've read that has come in on New York Giants on this side by our draft expert, Damian Parson, also Locked On NFL Draft, by the way. I don't get the sense that there are maybe a lot of quarterbacks that will have 1st-round grades in this class. And, right now the Giants, if the draft were held tomorrow, the Giants would pick 7th in the draft order, and they are behind teams that need quarterbacks. That's just how it goes. So that being said, if there's only like 1 or 2 quarterbacks that get a 1st-round grade, Giants probably aren't getting those guys anyway, no matter how many draft picks they stockpile. So can they afford to wait and say, okay, you know what, we're not going to get an extra pick this year. We're going to have to wait until 2025 2026, excuse me. We're going to have to wait till 2026 to get a comp pick to use. It's possible. Nothing's guaranteed is what I'm getting at. But, the bottom line, the takeaway here is if you're Joe Schoen, I don't think you let Azeez Ojulari go for just peanuts. I really don't. If you're going to trade him, get value for him. Now, I've mentioned that, the Giants signed Tamon Fox from the practice squad to the 53. I think that's more of a special teams move than it is, for the defense, for the possibility that Azeez will be moved. But Here's the other thing. If they do get their asking price and they do have to, if they do move on from Azeez Ojulari, I think Kayvon Thibodeau will be back after the bye week. So worst case scenario, they go one game this weekend against the Carolina Panthers with Tamon Fox as the starter if they need to. Overall, I don't know that they're going to move Azeez Ojulari. We'll see. Obviously, maybe by the time you see this, the decision will have been made. But I think that's going to be, the more I think about it, the more I'm pretty sure Joe Shane's got a higher asking price than maybe some teams are willing to put a pony up. Okay, coming up next, we are going to talk about Darius Slayton, who, well, what are the odds he gets moved, especially now that he's in the concussion protocol? We'll discuss it right after this. Hey, Giant fans, if you're looking for those hard-to-get tickets to shows, concerts, and sporting events, look no further than to Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to your favorite events even easier. I've used Game Time in the past for my favorite events that have been sold out, and I have been simply amazed at the selection and the competitive pricing that they offer. Get clear images of your seat views before you buy and rest easy in knowing that you'll also get event cancellation protection. And if you find tickets elsewhere in the same section and row for less, Game Time will give you 110% of the difference. So go on and get the tickets you want. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? It's game time. Hey, Giant fans, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if they win. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the very same page where you place your bets. So do you think the New York Giants, who are actually favored this week by 5.5 points over the Carolina Panthers, can cover the spread? If you're feeling good about it, why not hit FanDuel.com and get started with $150 in bonus bets with just a winning $5 first bet. Again, that site is FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, Giant fans, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. Make sure you keep it here all week long. We're continuing our coverage of the New York Giants. And of course, if any trades are made, I will have a reaction show for you, an emergency podcast, a video short, whatever I need to do. I will make sure I get it out to you on a timely basis. And that will be also for my for both my YouTube audience as well as for my listening audience. So we'll keep you posted on all that stuff. And of course, over on New York Giants on SI, there is a rumor tracker that, I'm keeping, up to date based on stuff that's coming out, things that I'm hearing. So if you want to check that out to see what's going on. Right now, it's kind of quiet as I record this, but a couple thoughts on there if you want to check that out. That's on New York Giants on SI.com. All right, speaking of trades, let's get back to business here. And let's talk about Darius Slayton, wide receiver. Now, Darius Slayton's name keeps coming up as a potential trade target. I don't think the Giants are going to move him. All right. Despite the fact that Darius Slayton, he's been pretty good. I mean, his stats, let me just talk a little bit about his stats before I get into the hows and whys here. According to Next Gen Stats, he is first on the team in tight window percentage, 28%. He is first on the team in air yards per target, 12.2 average. He is first on the team with yards after the catch over expected with a plus 23 ratio. He's got a plus 3.8 catch rate over expected, 64% catch rate, just behind Malik Neighbors is 65.5, but yet he has 34 fewer targets than Malik. All right. So why do I mention all this? Because Darius Slayton is a huge piece of the Giants offense right now. And I think, even though you're going to say, well, the Giants season is lost, just sell, 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 get a better draft pick and stuff like that, you're going to probably have a hard time convincing Brian Dable and Joe Shane that that's the way to go. All right. If they truly want to win games, if they want to, be competitive, Darius Slayton is not a guy I think that you can seriously think about moving. Now, that doesn't mean that they haven't or they won't, but I think you would be hard pressed to want to move that guy. I also think, and again, I've seen some people say, well, you could probably get a fifth or a sixth, not a fifth, excuse me. You could probably get a sixth or a seventh round pick for Darius Slayton. I wonder, again, as was the case with Azeez Ojulari, as I outlined, is maybe Joe Shane thinking he could get a little bit more for Slayton, given what I cited. The other factor, do the Giants feel that Jalen Hyatt is ready to step into that role by Darius Slayton? I don't know where Hyatt is in terms of, practice. We're not allowed to watch the full practice, so I don't know where he is, if he's improved or whatnot. But right now, I think it is fair to say Darius Slayton is the better receiver of the two. And, look, I get it, new quarterback and everything, but, I just don't get the feeling that they're going to move Slayton. I would be very, very surprised. And it has nothing to do with the concussion. He can be moved if the two sides, the Giants and whatever the acquiring team is, if they work it out. But I just don't think Slayton is an option. I think he's a guy that the Giants basically let him walk and then take the comp pick, because Slayton, I don't think he's a number one receiver, but he's certainly a number two. And I think, you look at the contracts, and here's the other reason why I think, the Giants might take a comp pick with him. You look at some of the contracts wide receivers have gotten over the last, couple of years. And Shane himself talked about this when they drafted Malik Neighbors. Some of these receiver contracts are just outrageous. There's a lot of guys you can maybe say are overpaid even. So who's to say that, Darius Slayton won't hit the market and get a ridiculous type of contract that pretty much, again, may improve the Giants' chances of getting a comp pick for him. So, I don't think the Giants will resign Darius Slayton. I think, there's kind of some sour milk between the two sides, given how, the Giants asked Slayton to take a pay cut, when Dable first came here, given how, he wanted a contract extension and the best he got was a revised contract. So I'm not so sure Slayton will come back. And I would also think, especially if Daniel Jones isn't back, because, they're buddies and whatnot, and they have that chemistry together, I question whether, he would want to come back. But that's for down the line. So that being said, Darius Slayton is a guy, I think he'll be a Giant when they hit Germany to face the Carolina Panthers. I would be surprised if they move on for him. Doesn't mean I don't think they should, because, I'm of the school of thought that if you can get good value for a player and your season is lost, do it. But it has to be good value. You don't want to give the player away for free. All right. So that's kind of where I think things are standing with Darius Slayton, but we'll find out probably in a few hours, less than 24 hours, actually. All right. Coming up next, there are some stats the Giants have that I really, really wish they would prioritize in fixing. And maybe they are on the docket for when they have the bye week coming up a week from this Sunday, actually. I'll tell you what some of those stats are and why they bother me right after this. This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. Life gets so busy sometimes that we forget to say thank you to the people in our lives that make it so much better. But there's another person we don't thank enough, ourselves. It's sometimes hard to remind ourselves that we are trying our best to make sense of everything. And in this crazy world, that's not always easy. That's where therapy can help with learning to pace yourself and to cope with all that life throws at you. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Fill out a questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find your assigned therapist isn't a match, switch at any time for no additional charge. So don't skip therapy day. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and let's talk numbers. All right, 2-7 season for the New York Giants. Like I said, unfortunately, the season's over. I mean, even though they're mathematically still alive for a postseason berth, they're not. I just don't see them making it. I really don't. Just too many things now have to happen for that to happen, for them to get to the postseason, including them starting to win some games. You know, this team, which is currently on, I think, the league's third longest losing streak right now, a 4-game losing streak. But let's talk about some stats, you know, because coming up, obviously, after the Carolina game is the bye week. And there's some stats that the Giants really need to I think, address. All right. Obviously, ranked 32nd in the red zone. They've got to fix this, okay? 40% conversion rate for touchdowns only in the red zone. That is 32nd in the league. One of the things that I notice with some of the red zone plays that drives me insane is that the Giants seem to like to run these slow developing plays. Now, what do I mean by that? You're inside the opponent's 20. The opponent now has fewer yards that they have to defend before they get to the goal line. Why would you run, especially against a faster, more athletic defense? Why would you run plays that require running out to the sideline? You know, like a running play, for example, that requires running outside, and as opposed to running up the gut. All right, that doesn't make sense. And the reason why I say that is because you do that, a lot of times these faster athletic defenses, they're going to string out the play and stop you. Why, again, with slow developing plays, you know, more than a 3-step drop on a pass play, you know, and then holding the ball on top of things, you know, for 3 seconds or whatever. Don't you think that's going to give defenders to kind of figure out, okay, where's Daniel Jones going with his eyes? And let's get over to that receiver so that they can't convert. These are technical things on the field, but I think some of the problem with the red zone has been play call. That's got to get better, in my opinion. All right, what else has to get better? The receivers have 21 drops this season. All right, when I say the receivers, I'm also including tight ends and running backs. That is second most behind the Cleveland Browns, who have 23. Giants better get these guys on the jugs machines if they have to after practice, because these drop passes, they are a problem, and especially when they come on third down, which a few of them have. All right, obviously, folks, points per game, 15.4 points per game, dead last. Now, here's what doesn't make sense regarding this stat. The Giants are 8th in average time of possession, 31 minutes and 28 seconds. They are averaging 64.3 offensive plays per game, which is 8th in the league. All right? But they're only averaging 15.4 points per game. That means that a lot of stuff is getting left on the field. A lot of yards, a lot of points. You know, I've mentioned the 2-point conversions that Dable prescribes to with the analytics, which drives me insane. Even though I understand the math and what's involved there, this team is not good enough to leave points on the field. All right, it's just not. So you got to figure out. I mean, I don't know if there's an answer to this, to be honest with you, but a team that is top 10 in average time of possession and that's averaging 64.3 plays a game, but is only scoring 15.4 points a game. That's pretty telling. And it might be a combination of execution. It might be a combination of actually a combination of execution and play call. Whatever it is, something's got to give there because they're just wasting talent. And they have the talent to be a lot better on offense. It's just not happening for whatever reason. All right. Defensively. All right. You know, it's interesting. I talk about special teams, and I've mentioned this before on the show, and how special teams doesn't do a good enough job flipping the field for the offense, which, by the way, needs all the help they can get these days. You probably could say the same thing for the defense, and here's why. The New York Giants are ranked 31st in interception rate. They have a 0.4% interception rate, which is 31st. They have 7 takeaways total on the season, 24th. All right. That is overall, they have a -4 turnover ratio. So that's 7 takeaways, 11 giveaways. Now, you could say, okay, look, the Giants defense, if they stop the opponent from getting past, I don't know, the 35-yard line, the 40-yard line, that's a win. But wouldn't it be nice to get interceptions and run them back and give the offense a shorter field, or to force more fumbles and get these fumble recoveries that give the Giants offense a shorter field on which to work with? Again, this is an offense that has struggled to score. If you can give them a break, why not? Why not, right? So, you know, that's something that I would kind of like to see, you know, the Giants address. There's a lot more, and I'll get into that, you know, like I said, as I do more research. But those were some of the stats that really jumped out at me. This Giant team, you know, considering they have now a number 1 receiver, they have a better offensive line for the most part. They have Brian Dable calling the plays. This is really disappointing to see that the Giants offense is still struggling the way that it is. And, you know, people will point to the quarterback as being the sole reason for the struggles. He's part of the problem. But is he the entire problem? No, I'm not going to say that. Not at all. So what do? Well, they got a game to get through first with Carolina. And of course, Thursday coming up on Thursday, Julian Council, Locked On Panthers, excuse me, will be on with me. We'll have our crossover show, break it down for you. The Panthers still haven't decided who their quarterback is going to be for Sunday's game. So we'll kind of hash out maybe what direction might be best. And then, of course, we have other shows coming for you this week on the Locked On Giants podcast. And I hope you will join me for those shows. So thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. And I will see you tomorrow here on the Locked On Giants podcast.